Are the Pittsburgh Penguins back? Well, Pat and I are going to discuss that, plus a lot more on this edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes. You can follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes, joined by the best host in the world, Patrick Damp. You can follow him on Twitter at Syndrome for Wet, and you can follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Happy New Year, everyone. It's 2024. Hope you all listening/watching had a very safe and healthy Happy New Year over the weekend. And the Penguins will ring in the new year with a massive game against the Washington Capitals tonight. Pat and I are going to preview that game a little later on in this episode. But first, is this team back, Pat? Because they had two very convincing wins over the weekend. First one against the St. Louis Blues, and the second one against the New York Islanders. Let's start with the game against the Blues. I wasn't able to watch most of this game live because I was at a wedding. I had 3 weddings to go to in 2023, which is pretty rare because I don't usually go to that many weddings unless it's just for family members, but had a lot of my friends that got married this past year, but was able to go back, watch a lot of the film from this game. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was how well the Penguins played defensively. They only gave up 6 high danger chances at 5-on-5 in that game. And they didn't really give up any odd man rushes. They also got the depth scoring. Tristan Jarry was fantastic. That was the type of game that you needed to play against a team that was tired, because you knew the Blues weren't going to probably bring their A game, considering they were on the second half of a back-to-back. They had just played the Colorado Avalanche the night before. And oh yeah, by the way, they were traveling for this game to Pittsburgh. But I really liked how the Penguins played in this game. Was it great? No. Did they play bad? Also no. But you really shouldn't care how the wins come by when you are where you are in the standings right now and you're fighting for your playoff lives. That was a big win considering they got the goaltending. They played well in their own zone. They got the depth scoring. They got the scoring from the Stars. It was all in all just a really good win for a team that continues to need to bank points.
Right. And that's the biggest thing right now is the fact that they're putting wins together and they're not playing. I don't want to say they're playing poorly, but they're not playing great hockey.
They're not on their A game, I think.
No. And they're doing this without the services of Brian Rust. And there's a team. This is a team right now that's starting to figure it out as they go into 2024. And I liked what you said about the way they played defensively against the Blues, because if you remember, we talked about it on the preview show, that the last time they played against the Blues, they were damn near careless defensively. A lot of bad play in the defensive zone positionally. They gave up odd man rush after odd man rush after odd man rush. And then you go to Saturday night and they buttoned it up very well defensively. And we're going to talk about this overall for the weekend as a whole, but there wasn't a ton of the big guys stepping up this weekend. This was largely thanks to the depth on this team that the Penguins came away with 4 points over the weekend and now find themselves 1 point out of a playoff spot.
Yeah, and just going back to what you were saying defensively, I mean, the Penguins only gave up 2 high danger chances in the first 2 periods of that game. You knew the Blues were going to push back a little bit heading into the third because the Penguins had the lead, and sometimes the Penguins definitely do sit back with the lead, let's say that. And the Blues had 4 high danger chances in the third period. But overall, again, I don't really see many odd man rushes. I didn't really see the Penguins giving up a lot of chances from in tight. They made Tristan Jarry's job pretty easy while also having him make a couple of really nice saves throughout that game. The 2 goals of the Blues scored, they weren't his fault at all. I mean, it was obviously funny that Kasperi Kapanen gets on the score sheet against his former team, but the Robert Thomas goal, I saw some people complaining about that. That was just a nice play, and I know the Penguins penalty kill has been really good this year. I know the Blues power play has been very bad this year, but sometimes you gotta just tip your cap to them, the opposition, when they just make a nice play, even though that's a struggling unit. But when you also have a game where, for example, you have Drew O'Connor score, and that was a beautiful one-timer from awesome feed from Evgeni Malkin. Gino has really been stepping up over the last week, and I'll continue to say the same about Drew O'Connor, man. These last 3 to 4 games, ever since that Ottawa game, he's turned into a completely different player and is playing like one of their best depth options. This is how I wanted him to start the season. And it's nice that he's playing at this level now. But man, if he would have started the season like this, he'd probably already have double-digit goals by now, to be honest. But last week and change, he's really come into his own. And it's been nice to see me. That release, again, on that Malkin pass to open the scoring against the Blues was chef's kiss.
Yeah, very similar to what I was saying in the last couple of weeks about Puustinen, where that's the kind of goal you score when you're feeling it. That's the kind of goal you score when you have confidence and know you can be playing with the top guys. But then you look at the rest of this Blues game and you get you get a huge goal from Jeff Carter, which is assisted by Jansen Harkins.
I'll say this, my friends. Jeff Carter is actually playing decent hockey right now. Everyone knows me on this show. I'm not a big Jeff Carter fan. I think he's been really bad for the last year and a half. These last several games, though, I actually think Jeff Carter has been fine. Hopefully he can continue this, and I know it's a low bar, people, but he's actually been fine. As you said, that was a massive goal where the Penguins really needed one late in that game. But go ahead with your thought.
It's a case study in professionalism for Jeff Carter, because he very easily, given that he is, and I've said it on the show before, borderline, don't think he would get in, but somebody who would be discussed when it comes post-career to the Hall of Fame just because of how good of a goal scorer he was. But he could have very easily thrown it in the tank and pouted and been angry that he got healthy scratch, but instead he was a professional about it and went to work, and he's come back. And, it seems like anytime he scores a goal at this point, it's a big goal. So if nothing else, the guy's a gamer. But all in all, you look at that Blues game and you just see a team that is figuring it out. You see a team that they may not be at their best, and we're going to get into it here next. Different story on Sunday against the New York Islanders. So I really like where the arrow is pointing for this team right now. Once they get Brian Rust back, I think the sky is the limit, and they can really start going on a run here to start the new year and solidify themselves as a postseason team going down the stretch run.
And yeah, Pat, I mean, we might have Brian Rust come back as soon as tonight against the Capitals. He can come off of LTIR. He's been practicing with the team, taking contact. We'll have to see if he participates in the morning skate today. But just want to go back to something earlier that I talked about with Evgeni Malkin getting a goal against the Blues. He's really finding his game as of late, which is massive for this team. He was in a bit of a rut for a decent amount of November. Even into December, I thought as well. He just wasn't playing at the level that I thought we were going to see from him for most of the year. But that's what happens sometimes when, again, a star player gets into his high 30s. But the last couple of weeks of December, he started to come out of it a little bit. Ever since that Ottawa game, I feel like for sure he's played at the level that we saw him play at in October. And it's been massive because he's been one of the best players on the ice. And then for Sidney Crosby, he gets his 20th of the year. We're not even halfway through the season. This guy has 20 goals. So a great game from 87 and 71 yet again.
Gino's playing like Gino again. He's playing very decisively. He is a menace in the offensive zone. He's accountable in the defensive zone. He's going to the net to score dirty goals if he has to. And he's just generally engaged in the play. And I'm not hinting towards a enigmatic Russian take here where people say he doesn't care and is disinterested. It's just, when Gino's at his best, he is a menace in all three zones, and he's engaged in every part of the play. So we have been seeing that for the last couple of weeks. And for the Penguins' goal to get back to the postseason, that's only a positive.
I said it last week on the show. When he is galloping like this, he's puck hunting on the ice, and you can see it virtually every shift that he's out there. He wants the puck on his stick every single shift, and he's playing outstanding hockey. We'll see if he can continue that into this game against the Capitals tonight. But before we get to that, Pat and I have to discuss the Islanders win on New Year's Eve and how big of a win that was for the Penguins. But before we discuss that, we got to tell you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipt, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from receipt before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal before you check out. You can also buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Down the Game Time app, create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. So, the Penguins had not one win this past weekend, but 2 wins. They're able to sweep this, I guess, mini home and home, if you want to call it that, against the Islanders and ensure at least a season series split against the Islanders after getting swept by them last year. And I also like the way the Penguins played in this one. Were they a little worse defensively? Sure. But that's where Alex Nedeljkovic comes in. He was on one during this game, continues his ridiculous start to the season. He's top 20 in goals saved above expected. He has over a 925 save percentage this season. He made save after save after save. There was that one sequence in the first period where it looked like the Islanders were probably going to score 3 times on him, and he's just diving right, diving left, even making a save with his mask off, for God's sake. And I was like, what is going on with this guy? He was the Penguins MVP, I thought, in this game. Again, I know the Penguins, I don't think they played bad. I think they still played well enough to win, but they do not even come close to winning that game without the services of Alex Nedeljkovic. What a start from him. And it's funny, I thought Tristan Jarry was going to get that game. We said going into the weekend, I thought they were going to go the opposite, but they have all the trust in the world in Nedeljkovic right now, and this tandem continues to be one of the best in the league.
It's a legitimate strength. I am gonna disagree with you a little bit though. On the Nedeljkovic part, not at all. That's spot on. Without him, they probably do not win that game. But putting aside the placement in the standings and in the direction these two teams are heading, Sunday was a heavyweight fight with just 2 fighters trading punches, because there would be 3-4 minute stretches where the Islanders controlled the puck in the Penguins zone and looked like they were threatening. And then it was the same thing for the Penguins for multiple minutes at a time, where the Penguins forecheck and attack in the offensive zone was absolutely relentless. And this was the kind of game that you want to see the Penguins win, where it's a game that they establish their forecheck quite often. They play pretty well. They survive in the defensive zone. They get big saves from their goalie, and then they come out victorious. Because, again, if they're playing a lesser goalie than why is his name escaping me here? Hunter, help me out here, buddy.
Ilya Sorokin?
There we go. For some reason, I wanted to say Samsonov. Maybe it's because he just got waived. But
Ilya Sorokin is a top 5 goalie in the league, sir.
Listen, brain fart happens. New Year's Eve, still hungover. But point I'm making is, if they're playing a game against any other goalie, they probably score 4 or 5 in this game, but they played an elite goaltender who was able to keep this one close. So overall, like, I think the Penguins actually played better against the Islanders than they did against the Blues. They just ran into a better goalie and a team that's just better defensively.
I thought the Penguins were a little worse defensively against the Islanders compared to the Blues. I mean, they gave up 15 high danger chances against the Islanders, but I will say the one part defensively that I liked about the Penguins in this game, again, no odd man rushes. I think you can count the number of odd man rushes the Penguins gave up in these 2 games combined on one hand. And I'm not joking when I say that. I thought the Penguins were very responsible with the puck on their stick. They weren't making too many aggressive pinches in their own zone, leading to odd man rushes. They were taking care of the puck even in the neutral zone at the red line, all that good stuff. But I do think the Penguins were a little bit lackluster at times in their own zone. Nedeljkovic had to bail them out at times. But hey, when you have a goalie that's playing that well, you can have that happen at times. And another big thing I liked about the Penguins in this game, they didn't get any scoring from their top players. 2 goals from Lars Eller and 1 goal from Noah Chari. We haven't been able to say it that often this year where the Penguins won a game, Pat, because their depth scorers scored, not because their top players scored, because it feels like the top players score every game at this point, but they didn't in this one. And sometimes you need those types of games where your star players just don't have it. It was nice to see Eller continue his really strong season and also see Noah Chari get back on the score sheet. I think ever since Chari came back from injury, he's been playing a bit better. Nice to see him get rewarded with a good goal in this one.
I've liked his game a lot since he returned from injury. He has looked very much like he was supposed to when they acquired him this offseason. So that's a net positive for this team. What did I say last week though? You knew exactly how this Islanders team wanted to start this game and how they were going to try to play this game. They were going to try to rip you down into the muck and the mud. And what happens off basically the opening faceoff is a fight between Matt Martin and John Ludwig.
Can we discuss that for a second? What the hell was that? What the hell was that?
But that's what I'm getting to, is that this happens, and good for Ludwig answering the bell, because you know how this stupid sport is. If nobody would have answered Matt Martin's challenge to fight, they would have been running around, slashing, hacking, throwing dirty hits. So Ludwig just takes the bullet, gets in the fight, and gets it out of the way. But instead of allowing the Islanders to use that as a galvanizing moment, the Penguins hold their ground for a minute or two, and then Lars Eller goes in and scores on an odd man rush, and the Penguins are up 1-0, and it's a proverbial middle finger to the Islanders to say, okay, you guys think that your fight off the opening faceoff is going to intimidate us? No, we're just going to beat you again.
That's all Matt Martin does at this point. He just fights people. He tries to run people into the boards. He doesn't contribute anything offensively on a nightly basis, so he just resorts to fighting for some reason. He's not a good player anymore. He's been doing that for years. I just laughed when I saw that, because I'm like, that's what you want to do to start a game? You want to fight someone after you got your butts kicked 7-0 just a few nights ago? Okay, sure, the Penguins will just go out there and win that game. And finally, I do like how the Penguins were able to defend that lead in the third period. Did it get a bit dicey at times? Sure. And yes, I had a little PTSD coming in because the Penguins had a 2-goal lead with less than 7 minutes to go. And you know me, if you've been listening to this show for a while, one of the biggest losses that I hated from last season was when the Penguins had a 2-goal lead against the Islanders with less than 6 minutes left, and the Islanders tied it in the final minute and then won the game in overtime. And funny enough, the Islanders almost tied it in the final minute. Anders Lee had a glorious chance, but Jake Gensel did a really nice job, to tie him up to have that attempt go wide. But overall,
that was the play of the game to me right there. Because when you saw it in real time, it looked like Lee miffed it and just missed the net.
That's what I thought too.
Because Phil Bourque was the same way on the broadcast, which, by the way, he has been fantastic as a TV color commentator, by the way. But he was like, how did Lee miss that? That's unbelievable. And then you go back and see the overhead view, and Gensel was the reason he missed it with an incredible defensive play.
Exactly, because usually Anders Lee, he's one of the best net front presences in the league. He hits that.
He doesn't miss chances like that.
Yeah, he never misses that. Even though he's a bit older now and he's not as good of a player as he used to be, he will still bury that chance 10 out of 10 times, and he's a Penguins killer. So when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, it looks like it's going to go in. But then you see the replay, just a great defensive play from Jake Gensel overall there to seal that game.
That is a sign of a team that's starting to figure it out and starting to feel themselves a little bit, because when guys like Jake Gensel are committing that much and playing that well in all three zones, this is a team that knows what it has to do to win. And this is a team that is showing you that they're going to do what it takes to win. So we're going to get into it here in a minute, but they have a huge chance to build on that tonight.
Right. And a lot of these Penguins wins, they're not flashy. There's not all these Harlem Globetrotter plays, but they're banking points. They're 7-1-1 in their last 9. The underlyings are getting a bit better. The 5-on-5 play has been really solid for the last several weeks. The penalty kill has been great. Even the power play woke up a little bit at times this weekend. They continue to get good goaltending. The depth scoring is really stepping up a lot more as of late. Heck, Jansen Harkins back-to-back games with a point. Congratulations to him. This is a team that's slowly starting to figure it out. And you bank those 4 points against the Islanders. You won't see them again until February. All of a sudden, and we'll talk about the Capitals in just a second, but I'll tease this for the final segment. If you can get a regulation win against Washington tonight, all of a sudden you're 2 points clear of them, and you're potentially only 1 point behind the Flyers for third in the division. Right now, the Penguins are only 4 points out of second. That is how tight this division is right now. But they're back in the race. That's what you wanted to end the year. You wanted this team to be back in the race, and sure enough, they are fully in it heading into 2024. And they will have their first game of the new year against the Capitals tonight. Pat and I are going to preview that game. But before we get to that, we got to tell you all about FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, and you can do so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. That's FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Hunter Hodes, joined by my co-host, Patrick Damp. Of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen/watch of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So Penguins Capitals comes your way Tuesday night at 7:30. Reminder to everyone, this is a ESPN Plus/Hulu exclusive game. So if you don't have those two, you can just sign up for an account, or you can just maybe do a free trial or something like that. But this is a big one, man. This feels almost like a mini playoff game to start the new year. Both teams have 40 points in the standings right now. The Penguins are the hotter team of the two. Penguins, winners of 3 in a row, 7-1 in their last 9. The Capitals, losers of 4 in a row, and a team that I feel like is starting to come down to earth a little bit. I am not a believer in the Capitals this year. I think this is a team that's just been getting really good goaltending. Dylan Strome's having a good year, and there's really not much else to that team right now because Alex Ovechkin hasn't been that good. They're banged up. Backstrom, I don't even think is going to play again this year. He may not even play again, which just stinks because he's one of the best players in this generation. But I am just really not that big of a believer in this team. Their underlines are also not impressive at all. And heading into this game, the Capitals are not going to have the services of Charlie Lindgren, who has been better than Darcy Kemper this year. It's funny, when him and Hunter Shepard have started, who's their third-string goalie, they have a well above 500 record. But when Darcy Kemper starts, their record is not as good because his save percentage is below 900. They are not getting the return on the investment on that deal. So if Kemper is the one to go tonight, that will be good news for the Penguins just because he hasn't been that good this year. But just to start off this segment, Pat, I think the Penguins are a better team than the Capitals, but like earlier in the season, they just have to show it because they beat this team down in Washington to start the year. They got to do it again in this one at home.
It's definitely a better team on paper. They should be favored in this game, if nothing else. And I agree with you with the Capitals so far this year that if the Penguins started off the season slowly because Tristan Jarry was struggling and so was Nedeljkovic, it was the opposite for the Capitals. They started the season strong because they were getting good goaltending while the rest of the roster figured it out, which if you want to pick the two ways to start the season, I would take the way the Capitals started over the way the Penguins started, just because if you aren't giving up goals against and everybody else is figuring it out on your roster, that's a good place to be. There's also something I want to point out here going into tonight's game about the Capitals, just for tonight's game and just for this Caps team in general. Just like the Penguins, this is an older team. They played 14 games in December. 7 of them went to overtime or the shootout. It's half their games. They're playing extra hockey. And right now, on top of that, more specifically into tonight, this is a team in Washington that hasn't won a game since December 21st. They lost in the shootout to Tampa Bay. They lost back-to-back 5-1 decisions to the Rangers and then Islanders, and then they lost in the shootout to the Predators on the 30th. So this is a Caps team that is just not looking good, and they are in a serious rut. So you have a chance at home in a rivalry game to beat your biggest rival of this era, and a chance to overtake them in the standings and really start to make your mark in the Metropolitan Division.
And it's the start of such a big week for the Penguins because if they're able to win this game in regulation, that's the biggest thing with these divisional games, you'll be 8-1 in your last 10, be 2 points clear of them. Heading into Thursday's game at the Garden in Boston, and the Bruins, after their hot start, they've been kind of a 500 team the last 16, 17 games. I'm not going to say that they're going to totally lose that game, but I would say it's more winnable at this point than it was earlier in the season. Then you come home to play a really struggling Sabres team for the final time this season. This is, again, another big week for this team. But going back to the Capitals, the Penguins are 3-0-1 in their last 4 against the Capitals. And when you look at their counting stats overall, Alex Ovechkin, only 21 points in 34 games, 7 goals in 34 games. If you saw that coming, please step forward, because I didn't, to say the least. After that, you have Dylan Strome, who, again, has been very good. I wanted the Penguins to sign him when he was a free agent just a couple of years ago. He has been, I think, the Capitals' best player, to be honest, this season. 13 goals, 21 points. After that, though, you have John Carlson, who's always steady in the offensive zone. Tom Wilson, you know what you're going to get with him. Anthony Mantha actually has 11 goals in 30 games this year, but one of the biggest struggles on the team, Pat, Evgeni Kuznetsov, 5 goals, 11 points in 30 games. He is not even close to the same player that we saw just 5-6 years ago when the Capitals won their Stanley Cup. He's kind of a shell of his former self, to be honest, which is really sad to see, because he was really fun to watch when he was in his prime, but he is definitely not that same player anymore. For the Penguins, I think, to win this game, though, continue to do what you did over the weekend. Continue to play solid in your own zone. Limit the odd man rushes. The penalty kill needs to come forward as well, because the Capitals' power play, believe it or not, it's one of the 3 worst units in the league this year, which also should be unacceptable considering the amount of talent that they can put out there on that power play. And yes, I know they don't have Nicholas Backstrom. TJ Oshie is going to miss this game as well, but still got Ovechkin from his spot. Tom Wilson's a heck of a net front presence. John Carlson, can rip bombs from the point. Kuznetsov usually is a pretty good player, but not this year. This still should be a much better power play than what it's shown this year. I want to see the Penguins win that battle. And then in net, the Penguins should have the edge, whoever starts, whether they go back to Nedeljkovic or whether they go to Tristan Jarry. I probably would go to Tristan Jarry for this one, but it doesn't really matter considering how good both goalies are playing right now. The Penguins have a lot of edges heading into this matchup.
They do. This is an extremely winnable in a game they should win. However, we have to always add the caveat here that in a rivalry game, throw everything out, because it's a cliche for a reason. These two teams have a begrudging respect for one another, but the hatred is still there. This is a rivalry. These are two franchises that have been inextricably linked for the last 20 years. So it doesn't really matter what's going on in Penguin land or Capitals land when these two teams get together, because it's a game that's easy to get up for if you're a player. So overall, though, the Penguins to win tonight have to play like they're the better team. They have to have the confidence, they have to have the swagger, and they have to play the same system they have been playing for the better part of a month now, where they are very responsible defensively. They are very heavy on the forecheck and smart with their pinches. And like you said, finally and lastly, and certainly not leastly, doesn't matter who they go with in goal right now, whether it's Jarry or Nedeljkovic, they have the advantage. And both of those guys are doing more than what we can ever ask of a Penguins goalie. All we ever ask for a Penguins goalie is keep them in a position to win. These guys are basically helping them win games at this point. And finally, power play goal would be really nice tonight. It would be really nice tonight to salt this team away.
I feel like we wish for a power play goal every game now, right? I think we definitely do. Yeah, I know. We just want to get this unit back to the level that we think it can be at for this season.
And finally, last thing before I forget this, same thing that you did against the Islanders with Matt Martin. Even if you got to fight him once, ignore Tom Wilson.
Yep.
You had your fight against him in the first minute against the Islanders with Matt Martin, and then you just ignored him the rest of the game. Just let him try to get you off your game and give him the old, yeah, whatever, Tom, see ya. We're going to the playoffs this year. You're not. See ya.
That's what Tom Wilson does, people. I mean, he tries to get you off your game. He throws those big hits. He'll fight if he has to. I mean, he has plenty of times throughout his career, but they also got to find a way to shut him down in the offensive zone, because he is one of the best power forwards in the league, and I'll be curious to see who the Penguins put out there against him when they're defending against him. But I think that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to / watch this one. Pat and I will be back with another episode for you all on Wednesday. We'll see if the Penguins can make it 4 in a row and go 8-1-1 in their last 10 games and get 2 crucial points in the standings against the Capitals. Honestly, man, if they can replicate what they did earlier in the season in October, they should be totally fine in this one. But again, that will do it for this one. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll talk with you all again on Wednesday.